Hi guys, this is Dan. Huge welcome if you're new here. Raise your hand if your reading goal ever feels a bit chaotic, cause mine too. But in this last quarter, something wild happened. I have been loosely following the Red Dead Fantasy Bingo Challenge. I still read what I love to read or I have planned to read, and for some reasons, I have actually taken off quite a lot of the prompts. So in today's video, I'll go through the books that I have read from April to June this year and how this book's gonna fit into this Red Dead Fantasy Bingo Challenge. Later, I will talk about some of the prompts that I do feel a bit difficult to achieve and may need some advice there. So get ready for some unexpected wins and a peek into my reading journey in the last quarter. So the very important question here is, what is a Red Dead Fantasy Bingo? In short, it is a yearly reading challenge set within the Red Dead Fantasy community that is from 1st of April this year to 31st of March in 2026. So you got a year to fulfill all these prompts. And how would I approach today's video? I won't go through every single one of the prompts in details because I have already made a video for it already, so I don't really want to repeat myself here. But still, I will go through it like row by row, see how many I have already finished, luckily how many still haven't. If that prompt is done already, of course I'll share which books it is going to be and how exactly it can fulfill the prompt. If not, I'll share which one I do think is a bit challenging, see if my TBR can fulfill them, or do I need to look for advice up on Reddit recommendation page, or see if any of you smart enough to come up with a solution for me. So without further ado, let's dive into the first row. The first prompt we have here is Knights and Paladins. This prompt is pretty straightforward. You need to read a fantasy book that features one of the protagonists as a paladin or a knight. At first, I was going to use Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, but I haven't get into that book yet. Yes, I know that I talk about that is like a book that I need to read in this year because it is a new release. It is like an epic conclusion for the first arc of the Stormlight Archive. But still, I haven't done it yet. But luckily, I have a book in the last quarter that can fulfill this prompt, and it is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. One of the protagonists in this book is a knight that got such a powerful ability. If you have read this book, you will know who I am referring to. And this one is actually fulfilled quite unexpectedly because when I go through the list of the books that I have finished in the last quarter, I found out that yes, the Devils can use here. The next challenge is Hidden Gem, a book that only got less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. Sadly, I still haven't done it yet. The book I'm still going to use here is The Outcast Mage, which got roughly 700 on Goodreads now. So hopefully by the time I get into it, it doesn't exceed like 1,000 ratings yet. It is such a bad thing to say to an author. Please don't let too many people read your books. But I need to fulfill this prompt. Then we have published in the 80s. Do I really need to explain here? This one I actually used The Magician by Raymond E. Weiss. Even though I have DNF'd this book, I have actually completed the first arc in the first book of the series, Magician Apprentice. And this book is actually published quite early in the 80s, 1982, which is like total mind blown to me. I didn't expect myself to read a fantasy book that is like older than me. But this book, Magician Apprentice, can be used in other prompts. So if I want to give myself some flexibility here, I am actually going to read Hyperion by Dan Simmons later this year. And that book is also published by late 80s. So this is a replacement if I need one. Next, we have high fashion, which is like such a difficult prompt I thought to be. You need to find a fantasy book that basically features high fashion, clothing, fiber art as like the main plot. At first, I was going to read The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, but sadly, I didn't have time to catch up with that series yet. But you know what? I read a book that can fulfill this prompt very unexpectedly. And this book is A Fragile Enchantment by Alison Saft. I don't think this one is like a super hype fantasy book. It is a YA, and in this book, our main character is a seamstress. She can inject personality into the dress that she is making. to make people feel all those emotions when they look at that costume. And don't ask me why. If you follow me long enough, you will know that this book hasn't been featured in any of my TBRs in the last quarter, so it is a surprise for a secret project, so stay tuned to it. The last one on this row, I actually need some advice here. It is Down with System. Read a book in which a main plot revolves around disrupting a system. I'm still trying to come up with a book that can be used here because even though I look up on Reddit for the recommendation, they are actually some books that not on my current TBR or not books that I am particularly interested in. In the hard mode, it says that it cannot be a book that is about governmental system. So I guess in some ways, it can be a book that is against a governmental system, a rebellion. I'm not sure here. If you have any recommendation here, preferably shorter books, do let me know in the comment. I still struggle to come up with a book here. So in the first row, we have finished 3 prompts out of 5, which is quite impressive given that I didn't really plan for this reading challenge. So moving on to the second row, the first prompt here is Impossible Places, a place that is set in like somewhere that would break a physicist. I haven't finished this one yet, but on the recommendation page, I found a really interesting one, which is the Dungeon Crawler Cloud series. It is such a hype series right now, many people talking about it and many enjoying it. I think it is a series that is like inspired by the good old RPG game in which we follow a human partnered up with a princess cat and they go through all these challenges together. It sounds really fascinating and it is a series that I only heard about the positives but never the negatives. I have already put this series into my TBR and I hope that before this challenge is over, I can at least start the first book of this series. On the recommendation page, some say that the Library Trilogy by Mark Lawrence can also be used here. So if I can't really finish the Dungeon Crawler Count by the end of this challenge, then I can use the Library Trilogy here. The second prompt on this row is a book in past. Basically, this book is divided into past, in as, in days, in years. This shouldn't be a very difficult challenge because if you read fantasy book, you can definitely easily come across with books like this. I think the book that is going to be used here can be changed over the time when I read more in like the next 3 quarters. But currently the book I chose is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. It is a shorter book that got 2 parts. Then we have Gods and Pantheons, read a book that features defined beings. I would say it is a relatively vague prompt because how can you define defined beings? Does it have to be a book that is about gods? I don't think I have any books from the last quarter that can be used here, but in the future, I think I'm going to read The Dragon Wakes with Thunder by K.X. Sung. The setup of this book is actually quite similar to Poppy War, where our main character can communicate with the gods in the pantheons or borrowing power from them. The next prompt is Last in a Series, to read the last entry of a series. Currently, I haven't finished any series yet, but if I haven't DNF'd the Rift War Saga, I can use the last book in 2 months, so such a shame. But I'm not going to worry too much here because if everything is going to the plan, I will finish the Wheel of Time or the Echo Saga by the end of 2025. Again, I can also use the book that held her heart by Mark Lawrence because obviously it is the last book of the Library Trilogy. And I love clearing the books from the Broken Binding Fantasy sub. If you don't know about it, it is a subscription that always features a complete series. So if I cannot complete the Rift War Saga by then maybe the Remembrance of Earth, but if I can finish the Remembrance of Earth trilogy later this year, it can also be used here. So there are plenty of flexibility here. The last prompt on this row is book club or read-along book, books that are featured in the Reddit Fantasy Reading Club before. I haven't gone into this list yet because they are all bloody long, and I don't think I have any books from the last quarter that can be used here, but I saw Wheel of Time is part of the reading club before, so I think if I can not come up with any other books here, I can use Wheel of Time here. I said so many here. For this role, I did significantly worse because I can only finish one prompt. But I'm not like panicking here because I know that I got plans for majority of them. The only one I need some advice is the impossible places. Now we are on the third row. The first one is about parent protagonist. Do I need to explain much here? To be honest, the first book quickly come into my mind is Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, which is a book that I have already finished. So I didn't really have much ideas about what should I read because normally you don't look for a book that features parent protagonist. Here I am thinking maybe in fantasy this genre, we need some more mature, more experienced protagonists, right? I think like they're all like young adult or like very young in like their early 20s to be the main character in most fantasy series. But where are the proper adults? Then I check on Reddit for recommendation here. Many would recommend the Blood Swan Saga by Who Are You? John Gwynne, because it features parents as the protagonists, obviously. And if you don't know, this series is also part of my 2026 reading plan, so I will finish this prompt in next year. Then the second prompt on this row is Epistolary. The book must feature any of the following: diary or journal entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, transcript, etc., etc. It is another super challenging prompt. I'm not going to lie here. I don't think any fantasy books in the market in these days advertise like this. Like, look at me, I got diaries in my book. Look at me, I got newspaper. Look at me, I got transcript. Nothing is like this, right? I can hardly come up with any books. I don't even think any of the books that I have ever read is doing something like this. I think the closest one is The Grave Empire, which I mentioned in the last video. So I do have to look up on Reddit and they recommend the Emily Wilde Encyclopedia. So I guess it is the time for me to check out this very popular book. And I mean, it is shorter as well. Then we have something relatively easier, a book that is published in 2025. I originally planned to use the book that held her heart by Mark Lawrence here, but in this summer there are some quite exciting new releases, let's say Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, and we also have The Art of Legend by Wesley Chu. Or earlier this year we have Firebird by Julia Cross. So if I finish any of these books, it can easily fulfill this prompt, and this is definitely much easier than the last one. Next, we have author of colors. Obviously, the author must be a person of color. Like I said just now, I have two books here, which is written by R.F. Kuang and Wesley Chu, and they are both Asians. But I also completed this prompt in the last quarter because I have read A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I hope I said the name of the authors right. I searched it earlier and I think the author got the background of Arab and also Sri Lanka. And once again, don't ask me why I read a book that has never featured on my TBR before. It is for a secret project which would be uploaded soon. The last prompt on this row is small press or self-published, and I don't think I need to explain much here. If I need to take off this prompt here, I have the Echo Saga by Philip C. Quintrell. The publisher for this series is the Quintrell Publishing, which is like a self-published fantasy series. This row is definitely better than the last one because we have finished 3 prompts here, finished by accident to be honest. And for those 2 that I haven't finished yet, I have already got planned for it, so once again, I am not too worried here. Very quickly, we are on the 4th row. The first prompt here is Biopunk, which you need to read a book that features biotechnology and or its consequences. Without a doubt, it is going to be a drop of corruption because the middle chunk of this part explores the consequences of the biotechnology, and it is quite graphic. Then we have elves and or dwarves. You need to read a book that features them as the main character. Currently, I don't really have any books that can be used to fulfill this prompt because even though in the Echo Saga or the Rift War Saga, they both have dwarves, they both have like elves as the main characters, but they have been used already. So if I read Hyperion in the future, and the Hyperion can replace a magician with the 80s fantasy, then the magician can be used here, if that makes sense to you. Not too difficult to understand, right? Then for the third prompt, you need to read a book that the main characters fall under the LGBTQIA+ umbrella. Here, I'm going to use a new release that I read in the last quarter, The Sorrow of the Sea by Stephen Ian. One of the main characters falls under this umbrella, and it can even be used for the hard mode because she is a person of color. Then the next one is another very challenging one, 5 SFF short stories. You need to read any short SFF story as long as there are 5 of them. I don't really want to read books just to fulfill the prompts for some reading challenges. I want to read for fun. So in short, I just want to kill not one bird with 2 stones, but killing 2 stones. Not killing 2 stones, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So if you have any really interesting, exciting suggestions, do let me know here because I am struggling. And on Reddit, their recommendation, I wouldn't say they are bad, but they're just like books or series or authors that I have never come across before. But if I do need to pick one here, I think it is going to be Cursed Bunny by Bora Jung. It is a not too long horror story. Horror is not really my go-to genre. It is just a book to be used here for this bingo. And it is not too long. It is a relatively shorter entry, so shouldn't take long to finish. But if you have any like fantasy one, please let me know. The final one on this row is Stranger in a Strange Land. Basically, you need to read a book that features a foreigner go to a new land. So I guess the main character has to be a minority in a majority. To be honest, it is another prompt that I do need some advice here because those that are on Reddit read, they're not that exciting, and again, they're not like books series that I have heard about before. Maybe I can read a memory called Emperor, which is like a sci-fi that I have heard some positive reviews over the years. Or maybe we can use this one because it is a slightly different take on fantasy, Blackwater Sister, a fantasy story about migration that is set in the contemporary world. And I'm not too sure here because in the last video, I thought I said that maybe books like Last Legacy by James Logan can be used here because our main character, Lucan, is traveling to a new city to investigate the death of his father. So does it mean that like the journey of Lucan exploring this new mysterious city count as like a foreigner in a new land? If that is the case, then I can use its sequel, The Blackfire Blade, which is going to be released by October, I believe. It will be a more exciting read to me because I really love the first book, and this book is already on my TBR, not like the Blackwater Sisters or a memory called Emperor. So for this 4th row, I would say that I have done a not too bad but not too good job because I can only take off 2 prompts, and there are also prompts that I need some help here. The 5 short stories and also the Stranger in a Strange Land. Here I just need some clarification for Stranger in Strange Land because it is such a vague prompt. And also don't forget to give me some advice on those like 5 short SFF stories. I have no idea at all. Finally, we are on the 5th row. The first one is to recycle a bingo square. Basically, you need to go through all the past bingo challenges to see if there's a prompt that interests you. When I saw this, I was actually thinking, is there any prompts in the past challenges that features a book that I haven't mentioned yet? Luckily and very easily, I found one in 2024. It is about criminals. To read a book in which the main character is a criminal, they can be a thief, assassin, someone who commits mail fraud, etc., etc. And the book that I haven't mentioned yet is Never Die by Rob J. Hayes, where one of the main character is a bandit, a criminal. So this prompt is easily done. Then we have cozy SFF. Obviously, you need to read a cozy fantasy, but there is some room for you to define your own coziness. Here, I'm not going to do too much research here. The first series that come into my mind is the Legends and Lattes, which is a cozy fantasy that possibly start this subgenre that I haven't checked it out yet. And I know that there's going to be a sequel out in this year, so there's no reason not to check this series out. The third prompt here is generic title, in which you need to read a book that got words like blood, burn, broken, cord, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. When people say it is generic, you would expect this challenge can be easily done, but surprisingly, I haven't yet. I don't read any generic book, obviously. The one that I can easily think of is the Equator series by Sarah James because it is always a court of something something, a court of something something something. You can also read Five Broken Blades, and there are also books that I have already completed, like The Shadow of What Was Lost, and we also have The Promise of Blood. All the books that I have read before got these generic words, but not those that I have finished in the last quarter. So after the Sword of Kaigen, I'm going to read The Blood Over Bright Heaven by ML1, another very popular fantasy book that people love. And obviously, I haven't checked this book out yet, or maybe later in this year, or maybe in early 2026, I may have already started the Sun Eater series. And the second book in this series is called The Howling Dog. So it is definitely a prompt that I will work on later. The second last prompt is not a book. You need to spend time with like SFF this genre, but in other format. I am currently doing it in gaming. So long story short, when I was like very young, there was like still some Facebook game. Yes, you can play games on Facebook. And there was a game called Unlight, which I was totally into. But later, this game was closed down, and now it brought back as Unlight Revive. So I don't think here I'm like playing a new save in an old game because I mean it got a new title and it is a game that currently I love. It is like a card game that is set in a rather dark fantasy world. Every character got such a tragic backstory and basically they all die. It got really complicated character relationships that you can explore, and it is like a very classic Japanese RPG. Finally, coming to the last prompt, Pirates, you need to read a book that the main characters engage in piracy. I haven't finished this prompt yet, but I think I'm going to read All System Red because it is a relatively shorter book. I don't need long book for this challenge. I think the very famous typical example here is The Adventure of Amina El-Sarifi, which I've read already. And I don't really want to start the Live Ship Traders yet because I want to reread the Farseer trilogy first. I have ordered the Inimicrate 10th Anniversary Edition, so I want to read that stunning copy. So on this road, once again, I didn't do too bad because I have already completed 2 prompts, and the one that I haven't finished yet, I have already got plans for it, so once again, I'm not too worried here. So overall, I think I did quite a decent job here because I have already taken off the 11 prompts here. And I didn't make my TBR deliberately around this challenge, and I mean we still got 3 quarters to go. So based on this like quarterly review, the books that I need to add to my TBR are The Outcast Mage, Hyperion, Dungeon Crawler Cow, The Dragon Wakes with Thunder, The Shadow of the Gods, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, Catabasis, Art of Legends, Cursed Bunny, A Memory Called Emperor or Blackwater Sister, Legends and Nate, Blood Over Bright Heaven or Howling Dark, and All System Red. I know that there are 13 new entries to my TBR, but I mean some of them are part of my reading plan already. Some of them are new releases that I do want to check out. Those that are new, they are relatively shorter as well. And there are 3 prompts that I do really need some advice here. Down with the Systems, 5 short SFF stories, and The Stranger in Strange Land. Once again, I'm quite proud of myself here because there are 5 prompts in 5 rows, so it is 25 prompts in total, and I already take off 11. So more or less half of it. And I also have plans for those that I haven't finished yet. There are just like 3 I desperately in need of help. So I hope you enjoy watching this quarterly review of the Reddit Fantasy Bingo. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything from me. I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye.